Welcome to Novara Live. I'm Michael Walker. Tonight I'm joined by Barry Malone. Great to have you back on, Barry.
Hi, Michael. How are you? Good to be back on. I want to say I'm still riding high from correctly predicting Mandelson's sacking last time I was on when you were a bit dubious.
Well, you're rubbing it in. That's very... You're not allowed to do that as a co-host. Point out how I was wrong and you were right. But anyway, I will graciously accept that you do seem to be better at predictions than me. We'll see what you can come up with tonight. Coming up tonight, Italy sends help to the Global Sumud Flotilla. We'll show you the latest from our colleague Keir and Andreu from the flotilla. Trump's dramatic Ukraine switch. This is, will really give you whiplash. Your party has relaunched their membership portal. The Corbyn wing of your party has, at least. We haven't heard anything from Zara Sultana. We'll discuss that. And Nigel Farage is travelling further up Donald Trump's ass. If you'd like to support our work, you can sign up at novaramedia.com/support and make sure to let us know your comments in the YouTube chat, or you can tweet at us on the hashtag Novara Live. And before we start tonight, if you tuned in last night or you follow our socials, you'll have seen that we have another live event coming up. It will take place on Monday, the 13th of October at Earth Theatre in Hackney. It's going to be a very special evening, foregrounding Palestinian voices 2 years on from October the 7th. And it's to mark the publication of Gaza, the story of a genocide. So this book is a powerful collection of personal testimony, poetry, photography, art, and frontline reportage. Aaron will be speaking to some of the book's contributors, including human rights activist Yara Eid, co-founder of We Are Not Numbers and Palestine Deep Dive host Ahmed Al-Naouk, and Al-Shabaka board president and expert in Palestinian and Israeli politics, Tarek Bakoni. Tarek Bakoni wrote a very interesting book on Hamas, so it'll be very interesting to sort of see what he says about that group 2 years after the beginning, or 2 years after October the 7th. We'll also be joined by Novara Media's Keir and Andreu at that event, who, of course, is currently aboard the Global Sumud Freedom Flotilla, and one of the largest humanitarian flotillas ever organised to challenge the siege on Gaza. Tickets are selling out quickly for this event, so be sure not to miss out. Follow the link in the bio or in the chat. Straight to our first story. That was the moment one of the ships in the Global Sumud Flotilla heading to Gaza was hit by a drone strike last night. The Tegeti, which was situated off the coast of Crete, along with around 40 other vessels, had its mast destroyed in that attack. Today, the flotilla organisers posted this update. So they say at least 14 boats have been hit. We are still assessing the damage. We need you now more than ever. We need the world's eyes on Gaza and on the flotilla. Now, besides drone attacks, those on board the flotilla also reported being sprayed with chemicals and radio signal jamming, with US veteran Greg Stoker reporting this last night.
Hey y'all, Greg here aboard the veteran boat attached to the Global Sumud Flotilla. Our boat was assailed by a quadcopter and they dropped a little popper on deck. A couple boats experienced that as well. And also our VHF radio was hijacked by adversarial comms, and they started playing ABBA. So this is the initiation of the psychological operations that we had mentioned previously. They're beginning off the coast of Crete. Luckily, we have live stream footage that gets stored in a backup. Unfortunately, this was out of frame, but you see we noticed the quadcopter drone run back. Yeah, somewhat startling. Yeah, so I'm going to park my head here so I cover it up, whichever VHF channel we use, but we've been dealing with this all night. Yeah, so that was ABBA. ABBA's from Sweden. Obviously, their weird obsession with Greta Thunberg being on the flotilla may have something to do with it, but we're probably going to be expecting this every night going forward. To just break everyone down psychologically. This is what they are. There's no injuries. Everyone's fine. These are just psychological operations. And they're probably going to increase in intensity and frequency from here on out every time the sun sets. So we appreciate your attention to this matter. Pressure your governments, please, to protect the flotilla, and we will not be deterred. So we're just going to keep on sailing, and they're going to keep doing what they're going to keep doing, and history will be our judge.
So, I mean, what looks so scary about those videos? The flotillas have been out at sea alone with no defences against any kind of attack, or at least they were, because Italy's Ministry of Defence has now deployed a naval frigate, the Faison, seen here conducting naval exercises to assist the flotilla. Italy's defence minister has also strongly condemned the attack by what he called unknown perpetrators. Yet he also said his ministry had informed the Israeli military attaché in Italy of his decision. The attacks last night followed days of warnings from Israel. In the last week, the country's foreign ministry has repeatedly described the flotilla as a Hamas flotilla, a jihadist flotilla, and a terrorism cover. On Monday, the ministry made this offer to the flotilla. So they said the flotilla organised by Hamas, which it's not, is intended to serve Hamas, which it's not. Israel will not allow vessels to enter an active combat zone and will not allow the breach of a lawful naval blockade. If the flotilla participants' genuine wish is to deliver humanitarian aid rather than serve Hamas, Israel calls on the vessels to dock at the Ashkelon Marina and unload the aid there, from where it will be transferred promptly in a coordinated manner to the Gaza Strip. As if we could ever trust Israel to distribute aid. This is, of course, the government, which has been causing a man-made famine for most of the past 2 years. The flotilla rejected that offer. Of course they did, with the ministry saying this in response just yesterday. We were sorry to hear the response from the Hamas flotilla representative. Again, their words, of course, it's not a Hamas flotilla. That the flotilla insists on pursuing a violent course of action and refuses our proposal to transfer in a coordinated and peaceful manner any aid that might be aboard the flotilla to the Gaza Strip via the nearby Ashkelon Marina. This response once again highlights the insincerity of the flotilla members and their mission to serve Hamas rather than the people in Gaza. If the flotilla continues to reject Israel's peaceful proposal, Israel will take the necessary measures to prevent its entry into the combat zone and to stop any violation of a lawful naval blockade, while making every possible effort to ensure the safety of its passengers. This language, very, very scary. The idea of accusing anyone else of insincerity when you're Israel, saying that we will distribute aid. That's, of course, the very definition of insincerity. And all this talk of it being a Hamas violent flotilla, of course, it's completely non-violent. It's an aid mission. And the reason it wants to deliver the aid itself is because if you hand it over to Israel, it's not going anywhere. It's going to rot in a warehouse somewhere. So how has the British government reacted to the attack on the flotilla, and which is, of course, carrying British citizens, including, of course, our own Keir and Andreu? Well, so far, they've said nothing. This morning, Novara media wrote to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee saying this. These developments put British nationals and other civilians at grave risk. The US government, the UK government, has a duty both to ensure the safety of its citizens abroad and to defend the principle of freedom of navigation under international law. I urge the committee to press the government without delay to demand immediate assurances from Israel that the flotilla will not be intercepted or attacked, ensure consular protection for UK citizens on board and provide an emergency response, publicly condemn any interference with this civilian humanitarian mission, and raise the matter at the UN and with international partners to secure accountability for any unlawful aggression at sea. The committee has replied, assuring Novara media that it will pay close attention to any incidents involving British citizens on the flotilla. So that's a group of MPs, of course, not the government. Our understanding is that the Foreign Office is potentially in crisis over these developments, not sure how to respond. Global reaction to the attacks has also put the UK's response to shame. So Progressive International has published a letter signed by hundreds of European lawmakers calling for immediate protection of the flotilla. Only one British MP has signed, Ayub Khan of the Independent Alliance. At the point of that, I imagine others might have signed by now, because others have, of course, been more vocal online. This was from Independent MP Jeremy Corbyn. I am gravely concerned about the safety of those on board the Global Sumud Flotilla, including one of my own constituents. They are delivering aid to Palestinians being starved to death by Israel. Israel must drop its threats and smears, lift the siege, and stop the genocide now. And this latest assault on the flotilla follows 2 drone attacks that took place off the coast of Tunisia earlier in September. But despite the intimidation attempts and threats from Israel, the flotilla sails on towards Gaza, where it hopes to break the siege and hand a symbolic aid delivery over to Palestinians being daily bombed, starved, and shot by the Israeli military. We had at this point planned to speak live to Keir and Andrea, but we tried moments ago and couldn't establish a good enough connection. Never mind, though, because he sent us this update earlier today describing what happened last night.
There were 12 or 13 explosions last night. We still don't know the exact number. And about 4 of our boats were damaged, mostly superficially, although one suffered structural damage. A boat called Zafira had its mast struck. We need everybody to keep their eyes first and foremost on Gaza, of course we do, but we also need people to keep their eyes on these boats. Because if Israel is willing to do what it did last night in international waters, just outside Greece, and I mean just outside Greece, I can see Crete from this boat, and it is willing to do a lot worse as we get nearer to Gaza. We're south of Crete, we're sailing east to Gaza, and then sun goes down, we start to get reports around 9:30ish that other boats in our fleet are spotting drones. So Alma, the other boat, other than family, my boat, to be struck by a drone in Tunis, reports that it sees 15 drones flying above it. So we're suddenly on high alert, but we're also a little bit miffed because we haven't seen any drones flying above our boat, certainly not close by. Our boat's at the front of the fleet. The rest of the boats are kind of arrayed behind us, sort of shape of a rainbow, I guess, behind us. And we're at the front and we haven't seen any drones. So we're a little bit miffed. I then go to bed around midnight. I help extra pair of eyes up on deck for drones, don't spot anything, go to bed. About 5 minutes after getting into bed, someone bursts into my room and says, "Get your life jacket on, come upstairs." So we're all standing around clutching our life jackets, and then suddenly, boom, we hear in the distance a loud thud. And the natural assumption then is, of course, that one of our boats has been bombed. We then have one of the crew come down and explain to us what's going on. The drones are dropping incendiary devices near or above our boats, that this is causing mostly superficial damage, and that it's in line with kind of psychological warfare, which of course Israel is very practiced in. So we're all huddled around for a while, and then we hear another one, bang, loud boom in the distance. And then that happens again, 3, 4, 5. We decided, we get clearance from the captain and crew to go up on deck, put our life jackets on, we go up on deck, and then over the next hour and a half, the same thing plays out again and again and again. Large, loud bangs in the distance over our fleet, arrayed behind us. And you would know that this is coming because you would see a flash in the sky in the distance above the boats, and then a few seconds later you would hear the bang. The first thing that would go through your head, of course, is, I hope everybody's okay. I hope this isn't the one where they've directly struck a person or directly struck a boat such that it catches fire or something like that. It's the first thing that was going through all of our heads. We stayed watching, or at least I stayed watching on drone watching till about 4 a.m. And then other people took a shift. I went to bed. That's that.
Kieran went on to tell us how the whole ordeal made him feel.
What was going through my head personally, while I was up on deck staring at our vulnerable little boats, is that Israel has been menacing my family for 100 years, as well as many other families, of course. And here I am with everybody, in international waters, south of Crete, holiday going Crete. And Israel feels comfortable bombing a fleet of boats carrying baby formula, medicines and food in international waters in Europe. That ought to be a terrifying thing for actually right-wingers, people on the right of politics, as well as, of course, the left. But Israel feels so emboldened to do whatever the hell it likes, that it is comfortable doing that. We need everybody, of course, first and foremost, to keep their eyes on Gaza, but we also need help. We need you to keep your eyes on these boats, because if Israel is willing to do what it did last night in international waters outside of Greece, just outside of Greece, I can see Crete in the background, then it is willing to do a lot worse as we near the site of its open-air torture chamber, of its genocide, Gaza. So we need you to put pressure on elected officials domestically, keep following Novara and my pages and Global Sumud Flotilla and any linked pages for updates. And please make as much noise about it as you can. Thank you.
You heard the man. Make as much noise about this as you can. I want to speak to Barry about this Italy situation because it's quite interesting. I'm just sort of looking at some of the quotes now, and they are quite strong. So the Italian defense minister, remember, this is actually a far-right government, has said, quote, "In democracies, protests must be protected when they respect international rules and are not violent." So I think that's quite strong. So the Italian government saying this flotilla has to be protected. We aren't hearing anything similar from our government here. What's interesting, actually, is that the flotilla has a number of Italian MPs taking part. So they include MPs from the Italian Five Star Movement, from the Democrats, which is their centre-left party. And this is a quote from the leader of the centre-left opposition Democratic Party. "Last night, boats with Italian citizens aboard were attacked in international waters. This is a deliberate attack on our country by the Israeli government." Again, very strong from a centre-left party. Barry, I mean, there is lots to talk about here, but let's begin with this Italy angle. How significant is it, do you think, that they've sent a frigate to accompany this flotilla, presumably to deter Israel from attacking it?
I think it's incredibly significant. I was really surprised when I saw that announcement from the Italians, but surprised in a very, very positive way because, I think that people on the flotilla have been calling for that kind of support. As to why it happened, I think there are domestic pressures in Italy. Obviously, with the MPs on board, that's a huge thing. I think the government is coming under some pressure to act because of that. And then also we had the general strike, was it in Italy last week, I think. So I think there's an element of kind of realpolitik to it too, where domestic pressures are probably leading to the Italian government feeling that, this is beneficial to them at home to intervene. But no, incredibly significant that a European country would do this. And the contrast with other European countries right now, could not be more stark. As Kieran was saying, it's really frightening what Israel thinks that it can do and get away with. They're running completely amok. And it's unconscionable that Kieran and I think 12 other British citizens are in that flotilla. I think there are at least 2 British flagged ships. This happened last night. And what are we now? Heading for 6:30. And there has been nothing from the British government. There hasn't even been a tweet from the Foreign Secretary or the Prime Minister. And so it leads you to wonder whether, whether they're not going to say anything, or probably more likely, civil servants have spent the whole day agonizing about what words they should use. And now we've gotten to the end of the day without anything being said, with 13 British citizens under attack by Israeli drones last night. I hope and I wonder whether the step by the Italians could lure other European countries out to do the same thing. I think or something similar. I think what we've seen all along, recently with the genocide in Gaza, is that when one country breaks ranks, other countries may feel more freedom to do so. So I think it's a really significant move by the Italians, and we just have to see over the next couple of days, if Israel continues with this campaign of psychological warfare, and that countries will come under more pressure with their citizens on board and maybe act in some way. I think everybody has to recognize also how dangerous the Israeli rhetoric is this time. I think last time it was, the selfie boat, or the selfie flotilla. Now it's the Hamas flotilla. And we all know what happens when Israel brands someone Hamas. It means that they're justifying, well, in many cases, killing them. I'm not saying that that's going to happen in the flotilla, but, if a camera is Hamas, it gets attacked. If a tower is Hamas, it gets attacked. If a journalist is Hamas, they get hunted down and killed. So, that rhetoric around the flotilla is really worrying. And I wonder if they now feel that they can step up their level of response and are maybe testing the waters. And yeah, it's just unconscionable to me that we haven't heard anything from the British government today. So I hope that the Italian action draws others out in some way.
The comments are very active. So my colleague Gary McQuiggan is giving people advice about what you can do to speak out about this. So he's suggesting you demand your MP speak out if your MP is one of the following because they have a constituent sailing. So Emily Thornberry, Keir Starmer, Valerie Vaz, Andrew Ranger, Ben Maguire, Neil Duncan Jordan, Martin Rhodes, Stuart Anderson, Barry Gardner, Jeremy Corbyn, Bel Ribeiro Addy, Desmond Swain, and Paula Barker. So all of those MPs have a constituent aboard the flotilla. So they should presumably take an extra interest in this. Or you can email the Foreign Secretary, of course. Lots of solidarity to Kieran in the comments. Also, lots of people pointing out that I pronounced frigate wrong because it's not frigate, it's frigate, apparently. But how was I supposed to know? An Italian frigate I'm probably saying it wrong again, but an Italian frigate is now on the way to join the flotilla. Consistency has never been Donald Trump's strong point. This was his position on the Ukraine war in February this year.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
And this is what Donald Trump tweeted yesterday. After getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Why not? Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it is very much making them look like a paper tiger. That message was posted after Trump met Zelensky at the UN General Assembly, where the two leaders hosted a hastily arranged press conference.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
Zelensky went on to appear on Trump's favorite news channel, Fox News.
I think we have a better relation than before. And I think we didn't have a close relation because we didn't have maybe time. I don't know other reasons. It's good that we have often phone calls and meetings. And I think the fact that Putin was lying to President Trump so many times also made a difference between us.
The new, more positive relationship between Trump and Zelensky hasn't so far come with any new commitments about weapons to Ukraine or security guarantees, but I'm sure it will be welcome to many Ukrainians. Barry, you couldn't sort of get two more different statements. So Trump was originally saying, look, this war is basically Ukraine's fault. The reason it's continuing is because Zelensky isn't making enough concessions. You had Steve Witkoff essentially saying that those 4 parts of Ukraine that Putin sort of illegally annexed, all of them should be part of Russia, even the parts still controlled by Ukraine. And now Donald Trump has suddenly switched to actually Ukraine should keep fighting because they can win back every inch of their territory. How seriously should we take this?
I was really startled when I saw this, actually, although I guess you shouldn't be startled by anything that he does, but because it was such a 180, because it was, just so stark in the difference between, as you saw in the clip, where he was in February. There are some people sort of saying today that Trump is very influenced by the last person he spoke to. So, he could flip-flop again if he speaks to Putin again. To your point, I don't think this will come with any renewed material support. I don't see that happening. It could be a rhetorical plan to put pressure on Putin. A lot of people are saying that. People are looking at whether it actually means support for Ukraine or whether he could flip-flop and go back to support for Russia. I actually think that there's a third option which we should probably consider, which is that this may be Trump just walking away. He said at the UN yesterday, and he's made this claim before, that he has solved 7 wars. I mean, it's nonsense. He hasn't solved 7 wars. In that list, he even includes Egypt and Ethiopia, who while diplomatic relations are very strained over Ethiopia's construction of a dam on the River Nile, there wasn't even a conflict happening there to be solved. So, he hasn't solved 7 wars, but I think he certainly would like to claim credit for this war coming to a ceasefire. And I sense that there's probably a bit of frustration there and a blow to his ego, that the Alaska summit didn't result in any deal. I did notice that in the Truth Social post, or one of the other posts, he sort of said, good luck to everybody, as if he was washing his hands of it. And I think that there's another thing that we should probably consider here, which is that Trump loves to make a deal, and he loves to go out and speak about how much money he's making for the US since he came to power. Again, at the UN General Assembly yesterday, he talked about 17 trillion in investments that he's brought in since he came into office. I mean, again, not surprising. That's complete nonsense. A few months ago, I think the White House claimed 5 trillion. Now suddenly we're at 17 trillion. I think the only actual verifiable figure you can find puts it at about 2.1 trillion. But again, he loves to talk about these deals. And when it's come to some of these conflicts that he is claiming that he has brought to an end, look at Rwanda, DRC. Again, it's a conflict that's, largely being fought through proxies and is continuing. They did sign a deal at the White House, and in that deal, there was mention of U.S. investment in East Congo, which, as we know, is very rich with resources that a lot of people covet. Then there was the Azerbaijan-Armenia ceasefire, which, as part of that, there is a route, I think, from Azerbaijan through Armenia to an Azerbaijani enclave. And that route has been called the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. And if you look at some of the things he said over the last few days, he's spoken about, how he's willing to work together with Ukraine to produce weapons, how the US had spent $350 billion on support for Ukraine. They hadn't. They'd spent about $120 billion. But again, for him, that's too much money. He's been successful with a scheme to have NATO buy US weapons or at least 4 European countries to buy US weapons and give them to Ukraine. So again, I don't know if he's washing his hands and he's going to sit back and say, look, let them at it. What I've done here is I've improved the situation for the US. I've stopped spending this money and I'm now making money from it and supporting the US arms industry. So yeah, I think that should be considered too. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me if next week he just flip-flops again. As to whether he's correct that Ukraine can take back territory, I think military analysts are sort of split on that. I heard mostly today, I heard them say that it's not possible. I did hear one analyst say that they could potentially retake the territory that's been taken since 2022, but certainly not, Crimea. So again, we just need to wait and see what he says next because he's so unpredictable.
I suppose the best case scenario. So, I've always been very open to saying, Ukraine's probably not going to get all its territory back, and some kind of peace deal would probably be for the best. But what Donald Trump did, which was, well, crazy is probably the wrong word because there was some intentionality about it, was give up all of Ukraine's red lines immediately and say, I'm actually negotiating with Ukraine to get them to agree to everything Russia wants, which is precisely the opposite way you should do it. So if he's now just sort of playing hardball to try and get the Russians to compromise, that would be for the best. I think I'm probably overestimating the strategy here. I think, as you say, this is just a fickle man who'll say anything at any point in time. Just because you were referring to it before, let's bring up this graphic, which was tweeted out by the State Department today. President Trump, the president of peace. President Trump ended 7 wars in just 7 months. Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, who definitely weren't at war, DRC and Rwanda, which I think you mentioned there, Pakistan and India, They did start fighting and stop. They said it didn't have anything to do with him. Israel and Iran. Now, of course, he backed Israel in bombing Iran. And Egypt and Ethiopia, not at war. Armenia and Azerbaijan. So a questionable claim from Donald Trump, to say the very least. After various controversies last week, your party has now officially opened its membership, or at least the Jeremy Corbyn version of the party has.
Today, you can turn your support into real membership. Our official membership portal is now open. Join now. Your data, your membership payments will be secure, and you will be taking this party, your party, into your hands. Because once the party is established at the conference, the role that I and other independent alliance MPs have been playing to get it off the ground will end. Our role is not to run the party, not to control it, not to direct it. It is merely to steward the founding of the party that will belong to the grassroots.
Now, the first thing I did when I saw that video was see, has this been retweeted by Zara Sultana? Because I had heard there would be some display of unity between Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana this week. But so far, Zara has made no comment about Corbyn's membership launch. So I presume this is no longer a party which has co-leadership. And one would imagine that Zara has been pushed out. I mean, as we said last week, she clearly did make some bad decisions. Of course, we're in a weird situation now because there are two membership systems. You can't sign up to Zara's anymore. I went on her website today, but presumably there will be some people who are still paying direct debits to the Zara membership portal. And now people are being asked to sign up to the Corbyn membership portal. It would probably seem wise to me to give a bit more explanation of what's going on. If you're gonna launch to, obviously I think Zara's is being shut down. We kind of worked out what was going on there. But this new one, I think as you're asking for membership, there could have been a bit more, this is where we stand now. At the beginning of that video, I think Corbyn said, we haven't covered ourselves in glory. So there's sort of an admission that things haven't been perfect, but not quite an explanation of exactly what this iteration of your party is. Corbyn's team have, though, announced plans for a founding conference, which will take place at the end of November in Liverpool. The conference will be made up of 13,000 members chosen by lottery. So sort of in the style of, is that the style of ancient Athens, I think? This is taken from their website and explains the next step. So they say, by October, our founding process will have begun in earnest, opening our membership portal, initiating wide democratic debate, and publishing draft versions of our 4 core founding documents: our political statement, constitution, rules, and organizational strategy. We will host huge regional deliberative meetings where thousands of members come together to listen to each other debate and revise the founding documents face to face. All members will be able to comment, suggest changes, and track how each document develops. In November, thousands of in-person founding conference delegates will be chosen by lottery to ensure a fair balance of gender, region, and background. These delegates will have a big responsibility to debate the founding documents, propose amendments, and vote on them at the conference. The final decision will be up to all members through an online, secure, one member, one vote system. Barry, your thoughts on this? I mean, when I read about this process, it sounds very complicated. And I often think when you've got a complicated process, which makes it seem like this is all going to be decided from the bottom up, actually what people are going to be asked to do is sort of vote yes or no to something which is kind of decided from the top, which in a way I would have preferred. Like, I think in a way, in retrospect, it would have just been better if this was launched as the Corbyn party. Corbyn was the leader. Corbyn said, let's have a leadership election in 2 years. Zara Sultana had the impression that she would be able to stand in that election, because Corbyn is the famous one. People really know who Corbyn. There was a poll in the New Statesman today showing 9% of the public would prefer Corbyn as their next prime minister. Now, obviously, that's not enough to win the next general election, but that's a lot, right? There aren't 9% of the public that want Zara Sultana to be prime minister, or Zach Polanski for that matter. So clearly, Corbyn had a big brand, and having a Corbyn party, I think, made a lot of sense. Having him fight the next election made less sense. It'll be 80. We've seen him fight 2 elections before. I think having him lead a party for 2 years, then having a leadership election where there's a handover. I mean, to be honest, that's probably maybe that's what's going to happen now anyway. But we've just had to go on a sort of slight meandering route to get there. Barry, what's your take on all of this?
The whole thing has been shambolic. I think it's fair to say, from speaking to people who turned up to the party, it's not just disappointing, it's actually kind of infuriating because, there are people, like Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana who have the opportunity to set up a really strong alternative and a new leftist alternative to the centrist Labour Party. And given the way the chess pieces all lie in British politics right now, I almost feel like it's a once in a generation opportunity to form a party like this. And there are very, very few people in the country with the clout and the profile to do it. And as you say, Corbyn is absolutely one of them. And, with Zara Sultana to bring in, a lot of people who I think look up to and respect her too, and build a really sort of broad-based coalition. Also, from speaking to people today who had signed up to the party, I don't think that many of them were that reassured. People were, as you say, expecting some kind of a united front that Corbyn and Sultana would come out together and make a statement. And that hasn't happened. And I think it's left a lot of people thinking that there are still two wings to the party, or at least two wings that haven't necessarily united yet. And there was a lot of confusion about the membership today as well. When that email went out, I believe there was nothing in it to say what, if you'd already signed up on the other portal, you were supposed to do. Would you still be a member? Should you get a refund? Should you click through to join this one? And I think that when you clicked through, you were told that you weren't a member. And in the last half an hour, I believe your party has put out a tweet saying, hold still and your membership will be transferred. And Zara Sultana, I noticed, retweeted that, but she hasn't retweeted the video from Corbyn. And I think it's left a lot of people feeling really, really confused and not necessarily reassured. And I would just be really, really disappointed if they're throwing away what I genuinely do believe is potentially a once in a generation chance. There are a lot of people who I think are holding out hope for the fundraising conference and thinking that things might become clear there. So
look, that a Freudian slip, a fundraising conference? It's supposed to be a founding conference.
Oh God! See, I'm just obsessed with all of the money they're asking for.
I'm coming in with an update because someone was saying in the comments that Zara has now retweeted Corbyn's video, and she has. It's funny that this is the way it's all being done, but yeah, Zara has now retweeted Corbyn's join your party video, and as you said, this your party tweet you just mentioned, I'll just read that out. So they said, for those who joined under the previous system last week, please be assured your data and membership is secure and will be migrated across. There is nothing more for you to do at this stage. So that is from your party, and retweeted by Zara Sultana. So maybe peace to some degree has broken out. So I was saying people will be confused which party they've joined. Apparently, these are all now getting integrated into one database, one system. So maybe, to be fair, it would have been nice if there was a joint statement with Zara and Jeremy, but probably this is a better situation than the party was in yesterday. So I suppose silver linings when they emerge. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's top aide, as well as the architect of his rise to power, is increasingly under fire over alleged misreporting of donations. And between 2017 and 2020, Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, was director of the think tank Labour Together. And that was, of course, the anti-Jeremy Corbyn Labour right group that backed Starmer's bid to lead the party, with McSweeney himself running the leadership campaign. You remember Labour Together for a while pretended it was something else. It's long been known that Labour Together failed to declare hundreds of thousands of pounds in donations to the group. And indeed, they were fined £14,500 by the Electoral Commission in 2021 for that failure. So we've known that there's been some dodgy things going on with this organisation. Remember, I was say before, it presented itself as soft left. We want to bring the whole party together. Actually, from the beginning, really, it was a mission to reassert control of the Labour right over the party and get rid of Corbyn. They were successful. The story is back in the news now for two reasons, though. First, the Tories are arguing that it wasn't just Labour Together that failed to declare donations, but also Keir Starmer himself. And they potentially have a strong case. So the think tank, Labour Together, spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on polling and research, much of which was used to help Starmer craft and then win his leadership election. So that should be a donation in kind, which should be declared. It's also probably no coincidence that £100,000 poured into Labour Together's coffers in exactly the time Morgan McSweeney was running Starmer's leadership campaign. So the idea that they're completely separate isn't particularly plausible. There's also a second piece of evidence the Tories are throwing at Labour over this issue. It's a leaked email from a Labour lawyer to Morgan McSweeney in 2021 advising that the undeclared donations to Labour Together be put down as an administrative error. So in the email, the lawyer admitted there was, quote, no easy way, unquote, to explain the failure to declare the donations, as this was something McSweeney had already done before. So he had declared some donations from Labour Together, but all of a sudden had stopped, which, raises some suspicions. And the lawyer poses this question to McSweeney. You had initially reported and signed off donations, so were presumably aware at the time of the obligations as a members' association to register. And the lawyer then suggests that, quote, it may be best to simply base our case as to the non-reporting down as an admin error. So let's just say, admin error, who knows, oops. So this was during the Electoral Commission investigation, I presume, when they ultimately got fined. So that investigation did happen. They did get fined. As I say, that's news that's been around since 2021. What's different now is the Tories claim that this leaked email suggests McSweeney may have sort of intentionally misled the Electoral Commission in their 2021 investigation, instead of this just being some sort of accident. So they say there are new issues that have to be investigated here. So what does seem to be the truth? Well, there is an obvious reason why Labour Together might not have wanted to declare their donations in the run-up to Starmer's leadership bid, right? It probably wasn't an admin error, right? So Keir was, at the time, presenting himself as continuity Corbyn. So I am just like Jeremy Corbyn. I have the same politics, but I'm more crisp, I'm more professional. That's exactly what he presented himself as. It wasn't true, but that was the presentation. Labour Together at the time were being funded by hedge fund bosses and billionaires. So, of course, if that connection was made public, it could have damaged his leadership bid. I'm continuity Corbyn, but also I'm working with this think tank who are getting funded by hedge fund billionaires. That would have been used by the Rebecca Long-Bailey campaign, for example, to attack Keir Starmer. That would be a plausible motive as to why you might intentionally hide where your donations are coming from and say, well, we'll face the consequences later. If we get fined, so be it. The greater good is to get, in their mind. Again, this is what I'm inferring. I don't know this to be true, but this seems like a plausible sequence of events to me. I suppose one reason it seems implausible is because we know that misleading people was an explicit strategy of the Keir Starmer for Labour leader campaign. Remember the 10 pledges, now nearly all broken, or the promise not to speak to the sun, only for it to be made clear Starmer only meant for the duration of the leadership campaign. Of course, now he writes comment pieces for the newspaper. Of course, when it comes to money, though, deception isn't just a political question. Did you lie to us? Did you betray us? But potentially a legal one. Have you broken the law? Now, that's why the Tories see an opening here. So party chairman Kevin Hollinrake has posted this about the leaked lawyer's email. So he says, it shows how authorities may have been misled over hundreds of thousands of pounds of donations used to install Starmer as Labour leader. We believe there is a strong public interest in revealing the full truth to the public about possible criminal wrongdoing. The Prime Minister was elected on a pledge to restore honesty and integrity in politics, but time and again, he has deceived the public and put his party before our national interest. And the Electoral Commission has sort of given a statement on this. They say, we have received the letter from the Conservative Party and are considering the information they have shared. We will respond in due course. Last week, Labour Together released their own statement. So they said, Labour Together proactively raised concerns about its own reporting of donations to the Electoral Commission in 2020. The Electoral Commission's investigation, which with which Labour Together fully cooperated was completed in 2021. That's the one that fined them 14.5 grand. A Labour source has told The Times this: neither Keir nor his leadership campaign accepted monetary or in-kind donations from Labour Together during the leadership election. So they're saying the campaign wasn't actually helped by Labour Together, so therefore he didn't need to declare it. That Times article has quite a lot of quotes from the book by Maguire, and the other one's names escape me. The two Times journalists who wrote that book about Keir Starmer called Get In or something like that. My memory is really escaping me when it comes to this particular story. But they have lots of quotes of people close to Labour Together saying, we basically helped Keir Starmer win this. So they think there is sufficient evidence that Labour Together was proactively helping Keir Starmer. Of course, Morgan McSweeney was working on the Starmer campaign and was director of Labour Together for a time at least. Speaking on Sky News, Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden gave a different reason for the Tories' focus on McSweeney.
I think Morgan is a highly talented individual. I'm not surprised the Tories are targeting someone like that. They'll see him as a formidable opponent. After all, someone who worked with me to help deliver the biggest Labour election victory for a long, long time. So I'm not surprised that his political opponents will use every weapon they can to try and attack him.
Do you think he'll stay in his post?
Yes, I do. And, I think he's a very talented individual. As I say, someone I've worked with closely.
So the book and the authors I was struggling to remember was Patrick Maguire and Gabriel Pogrund. We've actually had them on the show. And the book was called Get In. I did read their first one, which was about the Corbyn years. I haven't read this second one, which is about Keir Starmer. This is the third scandal, of course, to hit Keir Starmer in a single month following the resignation of Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner over her tax arrangements and the sacking of US Ambassador Peter Mandelson over his undisclosed links to Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, Barry, this is a good chance for us to have another go at some bets. And I'm going to take the same role again this time, actually. I think this is quite technical. I think it's going to be quite difficult. I don't think the public are really going to care that much who donated what to Labour Together in 2020. So I would say unless there is some kind of criminal charge, Morgan McSweeney will keep his job. And it doesn't seem to me as if there is enough new information compared to 2021 for this to, have a fundamentally different ruling to what was made in 2021 by the Electoral Commission, which is that wrongdoing had been done, but it could be dealt with a fine, and there were no criminal charges or anything. So my bet is he stays. Obviously, you got this right a couple of weeks ago when it came to Peter Mandelson. Where do you stand on Morgan McSweeney?
I think that he goes. Not imminently, but I think that the clock is ticking. I'm not saying that he's going to go next week. I'm not even saying that he's going to go next month. But I think that time is up for Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer as a duo right now. I completely agree with you. I think this is a Westminster story that is not going to really break through with the public, and I don't think the public will necessarily, as you say, care or see this as a massive issue. It's not exactly easy to get your head around. And I think that there was an article in the New Statesman today which also theorized the same, that this is going to go away, that it's not going to break through. But I don't think that the Tories and the leaked letter and the Tory sort of campaign to go after Morgan McSweeney is what Keir Starmer and Morgan McSweeney really need to worry about. Although I do think Kemi Badenoch was probably really annoyed that we're in conference season and she couldn't duff Keir Starmer up in Parliament like she did over the Mandelson thing. But I think that the real threat is coming from within. It's clear that the Labour Party is kind of at war with itself and it keeps leaking like a bloody sieve. So they're obviously all out there kind of briefing against each other. And so I think that if Sweeney goes, if Starmer goes, then it's going to be because of internal pressure coming from within the Labour Party. And, while it doesn't break through to sort of the public consciousness, you do have the media can create pressure in that Westminster bubble itself, I think. You have this thing where the media will say pressure mounts, pressure is building. And you think, well, where is that pressure mounting from? It's actually mounting from you guys. It's mounting from these stories that you're writing. So I do think that there's that element, and they're gonna go, Michael, but when will they go? They likely might not make it to the May local elections next year. So again, I'm not saying that it's going to happen next week, but it's only a matter of time.
May, a bet needs a deadline, doesn't it? So you're saying Morgan McSweeney's going to be gone by next May.
Sure, I can say that.
For the sake of argument, I'll say he's going to stay until next May, but I think Keir Starmer might not last past next summer. I think Keir Starmer has so little idea what he stands for that to get rid of the one guy who masterminded the whole thing would just be difficult for him. Which is why Boris Johnson tried so hard to keep Dominic Cummings, even though sort of in the end they fell out. For a committed nationalist, Nigel Farage is awfully keen to slavishly take cues from foreign leaders, as long as that leader is Donald Trump.
I wouldn't follow what Mr. Kennedy's department does. I'd listen to what they have to say, but I wouldn't follow it. And frankly, nor would I follow the World Health Organization.
When Donald Trump talks about links between paracetamol or Tylenol and autism, is he right?
I have no idea.
You think he might be right?
I have no idea. We were told thalidomide was a very safe drug and it wasn't. Who knows? Nick, I don't know. You don't know. He has a particular thing about autism, I think because there's been some in his family, and he feels it very personally. I have no idea.
You wouldn't side with the medical experts who say it's dangerous nonsense?
I wouldn't. When it comes to science, I don't side with anybody.
That was Nigel Farage refusing to contradict Donald Trump's baseless claim that taking paracetamol during pregnancy is a cause of autism. And of course, this whole ridiculous debate follows a press conference given by Donald Trump on Monday, where he spoke out against the use of Tylenol, that's the brand name under which paracetamol is sold in the United States.
So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that.
The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists has rejected the claims made by Donald Trump in that press conference. And the UK regulator has been forced to release a statement reiterating that taking paracetamol during pregnancy remains safe and there is no evidence it causes autism in children. Obviously, when Nigel Farage hears Trump claim the causes of autism are paracetamol, and when he hears the medical profession claim the causes of autism are not, his response is to shrug and say, well, I don't take sides. I don't take sides when it comes to science. This sort of rambling ideologue and the whole scientific establishment, I give them equal weight, which seems like a sensible position for someone who wants to be Prime Minister. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has hit back at Farage saying, dangerous and irresponsible. This man is a snake oil salesman and it's time people stopped buying. Perhaps more interestingly, Reform's chairman, Dr. David Bull, appears to agree with Wes Streeting.
These are very different vaccines from the ones that are in the childhood schedule.
Can we get back to autism?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is no link between paracetamol and autism, full stop.
So that's the chairman. I think this could be a real weakness for Nigel Farage, Barry. He's never, ever willing to contradict Donald Trump. He really never wants to. And Donald Trump isn't very popular in this country. I mean, his politics are growing. I mean, the size of the Tommy Robinson demonstration, you can see that the far right clearly has the wind in its sails in the United Kingdom. But the individual that is Donald Trump doesn't. And it is very obvious that Nigel Farage is just so unwilling to contradict him on anything, even when, you don't win any votes by saying against the entire medical establishment that paracetamol causes autism. I think you only lose them. So it does seem like this is, if you were going to bet against Nigel Farage, this could be one reason why.
We're betting again, are we? No, I agree with you actually on this. I do think that this is a really clever line of attack against Farage. And I saw that, the Lib Dems are going hard on it and Ed Davey is going hard on it, which I think is really clever. Over the last while, Ed Davey has just been interested in falling off paddleboards and gone down slip and slides. I'd stopped expecting, political ingenuity to come out of that party. Except for in the last election when they decided to target places with Gale's bakeries to find their voters. That was pretty clever. But no, I think this is clever. Like, again, as you say, Trump is not popular here. I think the last YouGov poll that asked voters whether they had a favorable opinion of Trump, only 19% said that they did. And I think there was another recent YouGov poll where almost half of British people didn't even think he should have been invited for that second state visit. And I think almost half of Tories didn't even think he should be invited for that state visit. But of course, Farage is unwilling to contradict him, no matter how batty, we've seen today, because this latest thing is completely batty. And I think he will remain reluctant to contradict Trump. And the media will cotton on to the fact that this is a great little thing to do when you have Farage on, is to put Trump's latest statement to him and ask him, does he agree with it? And that's the thing, Reform, there will be a certain amount of their base, probably not 19%, a lot of them will be Reform voters, but that's not enough. We know he needs Middle England to be a potent electoral force and to become prime minister. If he needs Middle England to get there. And right now, according to the opinion polls, he seems to have them. But this could become a problem, and the media will want to use it as an attack line. And, you'll have him going on shows and people will want that viral moment and they'll put the latest crazy Trump thing to him. And I agree. I really don't think that the British public will like this. So, kudos to the Lib Dems and anybody else who uses this as an attack line, because I think it's going to be quite effective.
I think it should be quite effective. I don't think it speaks well of Nigel Farage, let's say. Thank you so much, Barry, for joining me. Pleasure as always.
Good to be with you. Looking forward to coming back and making more bets.
Yeah, exactly. We've got to wait till May to see if you win the next one. Although I suppose if he resigns before then, you'll have won by then. So it's an exciting few months you've got ahead of you, Barry. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can make your own bets at home if you like. We'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. For now, you've been watching Novara Media. Good night.